A lot of drama right now at the running back position. We still have some controversy between Saquon Barkley and the Giants, Josh Jacobs and the Raiders. Some premier running backs still remain unsigned at the moment. Kareem Hunt, Dalvin Cook, Ezekiel Elliott. We have Austin Eckler's trade demands just being ignored outright by the Chargers. Kyle, what do you make of all this controversy drama right now at the running back position?
The Austin Eckler one, I thought someone was going to take on Austin Eckler, like in a trade potential for, I don't know, call it the Bears maybe would be interested. Maybe someone like the Jets. I would have gone for him as a potential running back to pair alongside Breece Hall. I thought someone was going to get in on the Austin Eckler game and nobody did. But then I found out that Josh Jacobs and Saquon Barkley aren't even getting the long-term extensions they're looking for. And if those two aren't going to get extensions, oh, buddy, Austin Eckler, there are not enough spots in the musical chairs of running backs for you to get a top running back contract. So, yeah, I'm just really surprised that the New York Giants have decided that they would rather Daniel Jones get $40 million than Saquon Barkley get $15 million. I am shocked that they have made that call. That's the one where I'm like, oh, you guys are just doing this wrong. But from the Jacobs standpoint, from the Austin Eckler standpoint, Jonathan Taylor, I know, was eligible for an extension this year and he didn't get one. Like, if you're looking at it from that standpoint, I'm surprised that the running backs are continuing to get devalued. And it starts to make me ask, is this a byproduct of organization or is this a byproduct of the league-wide trend? Because these are 3 of the 6 best running backs in the NFL. And if even they can't get some sort of, not even long-term extension, even a 2 or 3 year extension that the team can get out of after 1 year, like, I don't know what that is going to look like come next year when Jacobs, Saquon Barkley, and Austin Eckler are all free agents.
Well, from my understanding on the Saquon situation in particular, it's all based around more or less his 3rd year because the Giants want to guarantee, I guess, the first 2 years at like $28 million. I've heard that number thrown around. So $14 million a pop for the first 2 years. But that 3rd year seems to be the breaking point for them. 8th year of Saquon Barkley. We know the guy's had an injury history in his NFL career. You said you think the Giants situation befuddles you the most, but do you think they mishandled it more than the Josh Jacobs situation? Because Josh Jacobs, his thing is weirder because they turned down his 5th year option just last year, and now they're paying the price for it.
Which, by the way, the Giants did the same thing with Daniel Jones. They turned down his 5th year option and then gave him $40 million a year for 4 years after that, which is ridiculous that they made that decision. No one was going to pay that much money for Daniel Jones.
Giants, a year ago, they probably didn't even think they'd pay $18 million for Daniel Jones.
Nope. No, they did not. And Brian Daboll did not sign up for that job to pay Daniel Jones $40 million and not re-sign Saquon Barkley. And if Daboll did sign up for that job to make that decision, buddy, you should have held out for a better job because you could have had any job you wanted in the league, Daboll. The Dolphins wanted to interview you. You turned down an interview with the Dolphins because you wanted to coach Daniel Jones for 4 years of your first head coaching job. So, yeah, I mean, congrats to them. They won a playoff game and whatever, but they're still the Giants. I mean, last year they were 9-6-1, and there were only 3 good teams in the NFC. So someone had to win a playoff game, and it happened to be them because Daniel Jones had the game of his life in the playoffs, and Isaiah Rodgers had 100 receiving yards in a playoff game against the terrible Vikings defense. But the Giants this year are probably going to regress to the mean, and it's just going to be really interesting to see how much Saquon is a part of it, whether Saquon protects his value. Like, I have no idea what comes next in the Saquon Barkley situation with the Giants.
Yeah.
But from the Raiders standpoint, that one's a little bit more understandable because the Raiders don't see Josh Jacobs as part of their long-term future. And
he was a Mayock draftee. He was a Gruden draftee. They made it a point to purge the locker room of anyone that had anything to do with that previous administration.
Yeah, they don't see. I mean, Jacobs last year just had this incredible season. I remember the stat they showed on a broadcast where Jacobs and Devontae Adams made up like over 60% of their offense. And it was the highest total between 2 players of any football team in, I want to say, the last like 20 years or something like that. And which was weird because remember the whole thing about them the year that they miraculously made the playoffs when John Gruden got fired was, oh, look at Renfro, look at Waller, look at all these people who have, these unsung players in the receiving corps who have come out of nowhere and are supporting Derek Carr. No, they just made it Josh Jacobs and Devontae Adams offense. The defense was terrible. They went 6-11, and they'll probably go 6-11 again this year. So I don't know what the game plan is for the Raiders, because I don't think, like, I could understand them not giving him an extension because I don't think they view Josh Jacobs as part of their long-term future. And I thought there was a possibility he was going to get traded before we got to this point. Like, they franchise tagged him, I thought, to trade him. And now they're going to franchise tag him just to keep him around for a transition year with Garoppolo. And I just don't know what the Raiders are doing with that one.
Well, what are you going to do too? Because who's trading for running backs? If people aren't even signing available free agent running backs that are of Josh Jacobs tier, then who's trading for one? Like, I appreciate Josh Jacobs, and certainly he made big strides in the receiving game, which was kind of always a hole for him when Gruden and company were around. However, like, the difference between him and Saquon, like, you would say Saquon's a more valuable player because of what he contributes in the passing game. Yeah, like, I feel like Josh Jacobs kind of more easily replaceable. And that's part of the problem, right? That's part of why the running backs find themselves in this position. The replaceability, the fact that every year we get a 6th-round running back that comes in, or a Kyle Shanahan makes an undrafted rookie his star running back for the season. It's odd to look at the situation in San Francisco now when you have Christian McCaffrey. It shows you what you could do if you have a superstar running back. However, the fact that Alfred Morris's of the world come out and put up 1,000-yard seasons makes this all that more convoluted.
Yeah, and I understand that from the people who are in the middle class of running backs. It's just now, and that's happening for years, right? People have said the running back position is devalued. Nobody's drafting running backs in the first round anymore. Like, people have been saying that part for years. It's just now it's the top running backs. It's like now you have to be even Christian McCaffrey to get a contract, and even Christian McCaffrey just got traded by the Carolina Panthers. So now it's even the top end running backs aren't worth it, because we know that by age 27, they're going to run out of gas. And the only running backs that are worth paying big money to are the ones who are these all-time ridiculously great talents, which at this point is basically just Derrick Henry and Christian McCaffrey, right? There's no other running back I can think of that has gotten a long-term contract and the team is saying, you know what, we did okay in this one. Because
hell, even Christian McCaffrey, people would say during the first couple of years of that contract, they were not doing okay. Up until the point he got traded, the injury riddled, and that's again part of the equation here. Like, the fact that running back position is one of the most taxing and injury prone positions on the field. I don't know the exact fix for this situation moving forward.
Yeah, and you made a great point when we were coming on the broadcast, which is running backs are like trying to unionize within their own union at this point, because they are getting so screwed. Austin Ekeler is setting up a Zoom meeting with all the running backs who basically, as soon as Jacobs and Saquon Barkley didn't, and Tony Pollard too, let's throw Tony Pollard in this group also. Once those guys didn't get their extensions, basically they were like, all right, we're all just going to voice our displeasures right now. Derrick Henry was coming out. Christian McCaffrey was coming out and saying it. Austin Ekeler, who's been trying to get traded from the Chargers for months now and can't find a team willing to meet his price tag. It's just crazy that running backs at this point, even the top end ones, are walking away from the negotiating table just absolutely confounded by how the running back market is basically saying you're not going to get any contract longer than 2 years because of how the rookie contracts are set up. There's just no team that's going to sign up for that, which I guess you could always say the Cowboys would be willing to spend money on a running back, but even they're not spending money on Tony Pollard at this point. So I don't know what the game plan is here for those guys, because I don't know what's going to happen when Saquon, Josh Jacobs, and Tony Pollard and Austin Ekeler all hit free agency at the exact same time, because they're going to cannibalize each other's market that way too, because there's only going to be 2 or 3 teams interested in a high-priced running back, and there's too many of them on the table. So someone's going to have a quote unquote Melvin Gordon contract where they feel kind of slighted by the deal that they were offered. And I don't know how to fix that. You're right.
Yeah, I mean, the only ideas that like come to mind is, do you make like running back contracts shorter coming out of college? Like they don't have the same like 5 years before they get paid kind of situation. Do you limit the amount of franchise tags? But this is all stuff that when you get into the CBA too, the owners also have to agree to it. And
Mm-hmm.
where's the incentive for the owners to agree to it at that point?
Which is why the franchise tag still exists in the first place. Like the franchise tag was a concession from I want to say the 2006 collective bargaining agreement, and the players union doesn't like it. They don't want the franchise tag to exist, but it only affects such a small amount of players in the league that they aren't willing to give up the concessions that they would need in order to get rid of the franchise tag. They're saying, like, if we get rid of the franchise tag, we have to give up this benefit that we're getting from the owners, and the trade-off just hasn't been worth it the last 2 or 3 times they've gone to the table. And unfortunately, those 2 or 3 players who are getting screwed on the franchise tag remarkably all happen to be running backs this time around. I mean, sometimes it's other position groups, but the reason it's a problem for the running backs is since 2010, the running back franchise tag value has gone down, which is crazy. Every other position, it's gone up 50, 60, 70. By the quarterback position, 200%. And then the running back position, it's gone down.
Because correct me if I'm wrong, but Le'Veon Bell, because I know a name that gets floated around anytime we get into these hold in, hold out situations, will people miss games, is Le'Veon Bell, who sacrificed his franchise tag season, ended up worse for the wears because when he came back, he was just not the same Le'Veon Bell that we knew prior. He was about to make $15 million in that season, correct?
Something around that number. Yeah. I don't remember the exact number, but it was something like that.
And you're telling me, and reporting's telling me, that Saquon and Josh Jacobs would make around 10 million this time around on that franchise.
I believe it's 11 million. Also, Le'Veon Bell was 14.5 million.
Though I do think the one difference there is it was also the second time Le'Veon was franchise tagged, right? You do get a little bit of a bonus whenever you get franchised for the second time around.
Yes, that is correct. Okay, so it was 12.1 million the first franchise tag. So it was 12.1 million this year. I think it's 11.5 or something like that is the running back franchise tag.
Like, what do you do if you're these players specifically this year? Do you do the hold in? Do you miss games? Because, you sacrifice game checks that could come out to around $500,000 per game you miss. Hey, if you miss a whole season, you do risk coming back like Le'Veon Bell. Like that does exist. We've seen players that miss significant playing time, not just Le'Veon Bell, but hell, think about like even like Deshaun, how he came back last year after his suspension. Just not even the player that we knew prior in terms of ability. Missing games can screw you just as much as playing said games.
Yeah, so I would say different cases for different people. Tony Pollard, play on that franchise tag. You know why? Because Tony Pollard has played 4 years in the NFL, and he has made a grand total of $4 million. He was a 5th round pick by the Cowboys. 4th round pick by the Cowboys a few years ago. Play that franchise tag, my friend. Collect your $10 million, which is 2.5 times what you've made in your career. Yeah, collect that franchise tag money, Tony Pollard. Go for it. And the Cowboys are probably right to franchise tag Tony Pollard, because I don't think of Tony Pollard as a top 10 running back in the league at this point. Maybe he is now, given that like Dalvin Cook and Zeke Elliott are out of the league now. But Tony Pollard, I don't think of him as a top 10 guy. So you know what? Tony Pollard, play on that franchise tag. Josh Jacobs, do what you want, man. It doesn't matter. The Raiders are going to suck ass anyways. Just do whatever you want, man. You can hold out. You can play whatever. Do whatever you want, Josh Jacobs. Saquon Barkley, I don't know how it's going to go, but he's the one where I look at it. I'm like, yeah, I think you might want to hold out on this one. Austin Ekeler, I don't know if he can afford to hold out because he's like 28 years old at this point. Like Austin Ekeler is its own unique situation at this point, and I don't know how that one's going to play out, but Saquon's the one where I could point to him and say, you can afford to sit out. Not only can you afford to sit out,
a game, a month, a year?
Depends on what he wants to do. I don't know what the best strategy is right now. And by the way, the best strategy could change. Obviously, because of the franchise tag rules, he can't negotiate an extension anymore. So he'd have to wait until the offseason. But if you get a wink, wink, nod, nod agreement with the Giants that you're going to get an extension when the season ends, maybe you come back and play. If you don't, maybe you keep holding out. Maybe you wait until the trade deadline to see if the Giants will trade you. I mean, there's a lot of different ways you could go, but Saquon's the one I say you could hold out.
You mentioned the wink, wink, nod, nod with the Giants. We also kind of have to analyze where's the incentive for the Giants to do that? Like, because if the part of the holdup is the third year, then the Giants, in theory, could franchise tag for 2 years. And then they don't have to worry about that third year either way.
Yeah, and then you give him a 2-year extension and you're paying him for the third year anyways, but I think that's why they are where they are right now at the negotiating table, is that the Giants are willing to risk creating a public mess in order to not lock themselves long-term into Saquon Barkley. And while I don't see the incentive for the Giants to compromise on Saquon Barkley right now, other than him making a public mess and the Giants constantly having to be asked questions about Saquon Barkley, but even that's not that bad of an incentive, right? Like, all of the systems are set up to crush labor protests in the NFL or labor holdouts in the NFL. That's why people are doing hold-ins now, because they negotiated in the collective bargaining agreement they're going to fine you if you hold out from training camp. So that's why they do hold-ins now from training camp. It's the NFL has set it up so well to crush labor disputes, and that's kind of the problem for Saquon.
Now, hear me out. Like, and what stopped players from doing this even? Like, does Saquon technically even have to miss any time? Couldn't he just show up week 1? One snap, my lower back. It's killing me. Sorry, coach. I don't think I can make it to this one or next week or the following.
That would be a new one. That would be a new one where he still gets paid even if he's not playing because he has a quote unquote injury at this point. That is not a bad idea, but he would have to come to a compromise with the Giants to say, I'm back, I'm ready to play, and you're going to pay me, and I'm also not going to play. I don't know exactly how that one would work, but that would be part of creating a new public mess. I mean, I don't...
Maybe, does he break out the James Harden fat suit in a week?
Dude, again, this works with NBA superstars, and again, the NFL is not the NBA because a single player doesn't have as much leverage over an organization. Look at...
for a running back, too, it's like basically being a Dwight Howard.
Yeah.
A classic NBA center.
They do not have the leverage. And not only do they not have the leverage, the NFL owners are a lot stronger at crushing the union than the NBA owners are at crushing the NBA union. The NBA has one of the strongest unions anywhere in the country, nonetheless, just sports. So it is going to be hard to crush that union. It is a lot easier to crush the NFL players union. But I mean, Saquon Barkley's best chance is just to make a public mess. It's the way that James Harden got out of multiple places. It's the way Kevin Durant has gotten out of multiple places. You just got to make a public mess, and that will maybe create some level of leverage for you. But I mean,
his quotes kind of said that he could. His quotes on the Money Matters podcast, I could say, fuck the Giants. I could say, fuck the teammates. And, that is something to think about, too, because as much as players like to say, we mentioned the unionizing within the union, as much as players say we got each other's back, we don't check each other's wallets, et cetera, there is that human element of, well, I want to win games. I want my career to look good too. Because the thing about the Le'Veon Bell situation, when the offensive linemen started turning on Le'Veon and you started hearing other player comments start to turn on Le'Veon, because even if you don't believe it's true, because I don't think you saw the Steelers as a Super Bowl contender that year, the Steelers believe that Le'Veon Bell cost them a Super Bowl by missing that season.
And James Conner made a Pro Bowl that year. So that tells you just how much they valued Le'Veon Bell. Was James Conner made a Pro Bowl and they still felt like Le'Veon Bell cost the team. And that's why, by the way, Tony Pollard's not going to hold out. That's why you haven't heard a whole lot of Tony Pollard being upset about this one, right? Tony Pollard kind of knew he wasn't going to get the long-term contract, and the Cowboys, he's just kind of like, I'll sign the franchise tag. I'll come back for 1 year. Tony Pollard's going to come back and play. Austin Eckler's probably at the end of this going to come back and play because he doesn't have the leverage against the Chargers. Josh Jacobs, like I said, Josh Jacobs will probably come back and play, but Josh Jacobs, do whatever the fuck you want. The Raiders are going to suck next year. Their organization is poorly run. Who gives a shit? It doesn't matter. But Saquon's, that's the one where we know he matters a whole lot to what the Giants are doing. We've seen how that offense transforms when he's not healthy and when he is healthy. Now you can argue Dayball played a factor in that too, and that's obviously fair. And you could say that a healthy Daniel Jones changed the way that the Giants operated, and that's fair too. But we've seen how that offense completely transforms when Saquon Barkley is there and when he's not. So Saquon's the one who has some level of leverage, and it seems like they're not that far apart from each other on the contract negotiations. If he wants to create a public mess, by all means, go for it. And if he doesn't want to create the public mess and is going to do a hold in or a hold out or hope that he gets traded by the trade deadline, I mean, even if he gets traded at the deadline, they still can't negotiate a long-term extension with him. So I don't know exactly what the move is for Saquon. I think, and this hurts my pro-labor heart here, it just looks like Saquon's going to get screwed. Looks like Saquon's going to get screwed on this one.